Lawyers don't have to take every case that's given to them, and you don't have to take every client that comes forward.
No, but sometimes things develop as you're going along. And I mean, I've been involved in motions in court where the other side brings such a ridiculously horrible prayer for relief. And I look at the attorney and I say to them, "What are you doing?" And they give the shrug or they say, "I have to."
No, you don't.
There are times you do, I think. There are times you don't. There are times you do. I mean, the most ridiculous thing I ever had to do in court. I'll tell you one story.
We love stories.
Stories are always good.
This is all. That's all we have.
Right.
This is a radio show about stories.
I represent a guy who was divorced already. I didn't represent him in a divorce, and he's got 3 children, and he has weekend visitations with the children, and he has 2 daughters who are 11 and 12, and a son who's younger. He's like 7 or 8, and we make a motion for whatever it was for that the ex-wife wasn't doing, and she makes a cross motion, which is an application to the court for those who don't know what I'm talking about. And she asked the court to order my client to make sure the kids take a shower when they're with him on weekends.
Separately, of course.
Well, that's what I put in my papers. If he's going to make sure an 11 and 12-year-old girl are getting in the shower, we have a DIFUS problem. We don't have just a case here. It's a DIFUS case. And the judge actually said, I'm not even talking about that. They'll shower when they get home the next day. It doesn't matter. But this lawyer actually put this on paper. Why? I don't know. I never would have done that. I would have said to my client, I know you're just kidding me. And if you're not, change your mind to the fact that you are, because we're not going to do this.
Well, sometimes what I just do is I'll actually try to get a conference going, and I'll just say to the judge, I really need to say something that's not going to really be on the record, but I got to say it so we can get this out there. And then you try to advance that position so even the court will just raise an eyebrow and go, and then at least the message gets across to the clients.
Right, but theoretically you can't mention something, in New Jersey at least, at a motion if it's not in the papers first.
But you can't have a conference, just a conference, status conference?
Once the motion is filed by one side, you need to respond. And you could always ask for a conference, but people feel the need to put it in writing to placate their clients sometimes.
No. What is the most vicious thing you've seen in a divorce case, whether it's your case or somebody else's?
The most vicious one is when it happens continuously, which is the false allegations of abuse to get a domestic violence complaint filed against, in most cases, the wife against the husband, thinking that's leverage in a divorce case. And it's happened too many times, and there's got to be a way to stop it. I don't know what that way is necessarily, but that's the problem.
I've actually, as a lawyer, have seen neighbors complain about neighbors, making all these false accusations, or if there's a debt owed by somebody, and then they make a confidential, call to someone that says, I think so-and-so is doing such and such. And you know that it's all motivated by absolute malice with just no good faith. And yet, I know the authorities have to investigate every single claim, and I understand why. But there's truly no punishment for anyone who's actually a false accuser.
That's true. In fact, I've been in court on the same domestic violence complaint twice with the same people. Same exact allegation. Got it dismissed the first time, got it dismissed the second time, but there's nothing we can really do unless a court's going to take a stand and say, you made a fraudulent accusation, we're going to take you up on that, which doesn't happen. There's no incentive not to do it for these people who think they're going to get something out of it.
I think part of the problem comes from TV, where people get the impression from shows like Law and Order and things like that a courtroom's role, the lawyer in the courtroom, is to do what I tell you to do. And that's why I hire you, mouthpiece. Your job is to do what I want.
Right, and the truth is, the lawyer really has some kind of obligation to almost be not a mediator between the client and the court system, but to mediate between the two, because sometimes the clients, I want you to take his house. Well, you can't do that. Well, I want my pain and suffering. Well, that only applies in personal injury. Well, what about my time? I'm like, well, unfortunately, your time doesn't count to the court system. So you hear a lot of the common themes, and I want you to make them miserable. I want you to make them spend money. It's like, well, but you'll be spending money too. So a lot of times you have to temper the client's anger, emotion, frustration, which is real and probably pent up.
Oh, absolutely. I try from minute one to explain to the clients when they come in, before they're even clients, this is how I am. I try to do the best job that I can do for you, within reason, and I'm as pragmatic as I can possibly be. Meaning, I'm not going to spend hours upon hours of your time, my time and your money, arguing a point that is not worth arguing on your behalf. I'm not going to burden the court with something ridiculous. I'm not going to take a stand just to upset someone when it doesn't have any merit to it. Others don't necessarily feel that. I had to stand up in court one day and actually say on the record, the other attorney had sandbagged me with a motion he filed. And it wasn't a word I used callously. It was a very important word to use because this attorney really did something I felt was abhorrent to me that I would never have done to another attorney.
Well, one thing, you're listening to Taking Care of Business on WCWP 88.1 FM, WCWP.org. We are Taking Care of Business, hosted by Richard Solomon, co-hosted by Paul Solomon, and we are here with Andrew Wolfenson, the author of In His Own Defense, and you got to take a look at the great book he's written at inhisown.defense.com, and of course, if you want to send an email regarding the book, it's info at inhisown.defense.com. Good thing I'm not on commercial radio. They would have fired me for that read. I guess let's ask this question: how much of the book has you in it? Are there parts of the book that are somewhat autobiographical? I mean, obviously not the murder, and obviously not that kind of stuff.
Big disclaimer: the book itself is fiction.
Yeah,
everybody asks me that question.
Well,
no, it's fiction.
You know, there's no Goldberg, and you know.
Right. Well, there are apparently Eric Goldbergs that are practicing law in New Jersey, and I've been put in contact with one. And as long as he doesn't ask for residuals or royalties, I guess I'm okay. There are, I think, in anything you write, there's parts of you that come through, and people will say to me, I was reading a book, and it was so obviously you, because I know how you are and how you speak. So the part that Paul started reading in the very beginning, or that you read in the very beginning, Richie, that first chapter is me. That first chapter about the guy who just wants free legal advice, and that's the way it plays out. I've been through that with people too many times. And so that part was me. Now, the guy's a Jewish guy in New Jersey. He's an attorney in New Jersey. He's a Yankees fan. Those are all me also. Outside of that,
you got to write from what you know.
Right,
You know.
Outside of that, it's all fiction.
Let's talk about baseball just to change things up. I saw that you're involved with fantasy baseball.
Yes, that's my other job. I'm a commissioner of a fantasy baseball league.
That's got to be, you got to talk about that. That's got to be sort of, you know, a very unusual and very fun endeavor, and certainly a great departure from sort of fighting with people. And, you know, as lawyers, you know, we're hired combatants. It's
a lot of fun. In fact, the league started 3 years ago with 9 people or 9 teams. A lot of teams are like partners. Like I have a partner on my team. This year we're up to 14, and I think it's great. And what it is for me also is a social outlet. Like we try to get together periodically. It never seems to work out, but we're going to try really hard this year to do it and go out and have what we'll call a league meeting, which really is just a chance to go to a bar and watch a game and hang out. But I
have to coin that. There you go. Oh, league meeting.
It seems to work once in a while. You can't do it all the time, but it seems to work once in a while. But I think it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And it also, as you get older, at least as I get older, I started not paying attention to baseball. Like when I was a kid, I knew every player. I knew every statistic. I knew it all. Now, I couldn't even name half the guys in the Yankees now. So the league kind of gets me every March, April back into baseball so I can learn the new hot players and pay attention and see what's really going on.
How does your league work? Let's break it down for the people listening, and especially if they don't know how fantasy baseball works. How does it work? Is there a draft? You know?
There's a draft. I have to think to myself, we're doing a new format this year. There's a draft, and what the draft is all 14 guys or all 14 teams get together, and we basically pick players to fill a team that has a set number of slots at each position. And we did it the first couple of years as an auction, which was fun because now you're bidding and you have a set amount of money to use.
Okay.
Now we do a straight draft because it's quicker. And so Team 1 picks first, Team 14 picks 14th, and then Team 14 picks the first round of the next draft, and it's a serpentine back and forth. And then you compare yourself to the other players based on the statistics of the players you drafted. Now, in the past, we did it cumulatively, meaning it was just all the stats for the whole year would go into your overall thing. Each team is then ranked in every category of statistics. You get points based on that. Whoever's the most points wins. The problem with that, as we saw in our league, was that by, say, July, if not earlier, half the teams were out. So this year we're doing it differently. We're doing what's called a head-to-head league now. So let's assume I have a team and you have a team. 1 week we'll play against each other. So it's my team against your team. Statistics for that week only for the teams. Whoever wins more categories gets 1 win. The other team gets a loss. And you have standings like regular baseball based on that, which theoretically evens it out over the long haul and makes it more exciting for everybody as the team goes on.
Whose job is it to be the statistician?
ESPN.
No, I meant to implement the statistics into your league. Because I'm sure.
Like picking the categories?
Well, no. Who implements? Like, who's the scorekeeper?
ESPN. It's an online.
No, in other words, no. But I'm just
So
saying.
you plug the data into ESPN of your team.
Yes, ESPN has a website.
Okay.
I'm sorry. ESPN has a website, and we have each team listed with the players, and they do all the statistics for us.
That's great. So
Forget
someone
about
else,
it otherwise.
Yeah, because I was going to say, how does like all the number crunching? Because you need like CPAs or.
The first time I did it I was still in law school, so it was 1990, 91, I guess, and we had a league of 4 guys, and I did the stats. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's got to be because there's no off-the-shelf program that you can really use to plug it in. So
Well, back then there certainly wasn't back then.
Excel didn't exist back then.
No, exactly.
It was
It was
Lotus
real.
1, 2, 3. You probably did it on.
I did it by hand.
By hand.
With a
I had a
with a
newspaper with a
yeah,
calculator
yeah.
and did it by hand.
Wow.
Which was easy for like home runs and stuff like that, but for batting average, which is a function of hits and runs, I had to do subtraction by week, and it was horrible. I would never do it again.
Wow.
So then when the sites online started up, well, what happened after that was there were companies that would do it, that you'd have do for you. Now, ESPN has one, I think MSN, all the big companies have one.
Wow. Now, you have your draft, and then you have your teams. How does can you trades and
Yes.
disabled players, or the injured reserve? How does all that work?
Just like a regular baseball league, really. I mean, you can trade. I did a trade the other night with a guy, a pre-draft trade
Wow.
of 2 players because it's more fun that way. Guy gets disabled, you put him on a disabled list, you pick up another guy from the available players. We have a bench, so you can flip-flop guys when you want to every so often. It makes it more interesting. If we have a league where nobody's doing any transactions, it's boring. There's no reason for it. If all we do is a draft, and then at the end of the year say, hey, I won, what am I bothering for? It's not worth
You're
it.
throwing darts.
Exactly. It's not worth doing anything. So this way, it's a weekly, if not a daily thing. I mean, I talk to my partner during the season almost every day about this, not because I want to, because he's crazy.
Now,
And he pays attention. He stays up late watching games and tells me what's going on.
when you had the draft for money, did you apply any of the Moneyball statistical thinking?
Not necessarily, because it's really all statistically based, whereas Moneyball is based, don't forget,
On money.
intangibles and money.
Yeah.
This is all very statistic based, and you just have to, I guess to a certain extent, because you're trying to find guys that really can fit across a broad span of categories. So if you have categories like home runs, runs batted in, and stolen bases and batting average, do you just pick a guy who can hit home runs, or do you try to find a guy who might hit a few less home runs but steals a lot of bases? So there's guys that kind of straddle both things that you try to get.
So how much? I guess you have to have a lot of strategy adjustments during the year.
If you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And also, do you find that you're now watching games that you would not normally watch because you have a player on that? Or
I have a law practice, and I have 3 children, and I have a wife, and the idea
And a book.
and a book now, and the idea of watching that Padres Dodger game at 11 o'clock on ESPN doesn't always hold its allure. Once in a while, if there's a good game on, I will, but I don't really. I mean, if I can't sleep, maybe I'll watch, but I don't I won't watch a Met game, for example. I watch very few innings of Met games. I just can't sit through them.
Well, you do. You tape them and then you watch them on like triple speed,
Right, I guess that can be done also. That's true too. You could do that.
and then you kind of just you get the stats and you just do the run through.
Right.